Whether you're 2-0, 1-1, or the dreaded 0-2, your fantasy season is far from over. But regardless of whether your team is a juggernaut and healthy, or you drafted CMC and Isaiah Pacheco, it's time to get your head out of the sand. And as our good friend and fellow co-host would say, get busy. So on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we have the only running back rankings you will need to win week 3 of the fantasy football season. I'm your host, Sean Moran, and I am joined by my co-host, good friend, and fellow knower of ball, Aiden Haller. Aiden, how are we doing today, man?
Doing fantastic, Sean. I survived Monday night. I had some tough matchups, but I'm riding into week 2 with no worse than 500 fantasy teams. So, I'm 500 or better in all my leagues, which is good. Getting to 0-2 isn't a death sentence, but you get to 0-3, 0-4, and it gets dark pretty quick. So, feeling good. There's, the rankings are changing a lot pretty quickly here. Some things we thought we knew, we didn't really know. So, feeling good though, man. I can't believe it's already week 3.
Yeah, week 1 is kind of a sham. Week 2, it starts to crystallize even more. And by week 4,
it's like we
have a pretty good understanding.
This is really happening, yeah.
But running back's a pretty volatile position with injuries, so it's always going to change, I feel like, week in and week out. So,
exactly, yeah.
We're going to dive into it because today's episode is pretty straightforward. I've ranked the top 44 running backs, and I've broken them into 6 tiers. I'm going to take you all through each tier, and I'm going to share guys that I'm higher or lower on versus Fantasy Pros ECR, which is Expert Consensus Rankings. We're going to stop at each tier. Aiden's going to share his thoughts on some of the guys that he's higher or lower on as well. Some might even say it's kind of a start-sit, maybe even like a love-hate. We're groundbreaking.
I don't know.
Groundbreaking on this channel, but we have a big announcement. It's a big moment for the show today because we're unveiling something new. We are unveiling our first ever proprietary ranking model that I have stupidly enough decided to call the RTM score. We're workshopping that name, but essentially I have created a weighted system that combines a player's usage, production, team expected point total, and strength of opponent to rank each RB for the week. This is just the first iteration of the projection. I'll continue to tinker with it, but we're excited to unveil it today on today's episode. But before we do get to RBs, Aiden, if this is the first time someone has discovered our channel on YouTube, what should the good people do at home?
You know what to do. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to put your legs up. You're going to hang out with your laptop. Maybe you're at your desk. Hang out with us 20, 30 minutes. See what you think. We're going to riff. We're going to give you some good stats. We're not going to get too nerdy with you. We're going to have a good time, though. And then at the conclusion, wherever you end up tailing off, you got to decide, do I continue with the mean team? Am I on board? Do I give it a like? Do I give it a comment? Do I subscribe? Those are all choices only you can make. But we hope we get your attention. We hope we make you laugh. And you join the team. Simple as that.
This is a labor of love for me, Aiden, and Keegan. Keegan's our other co-host who's not with us today. We all have full-time jobs. We've kind of thrown ourselves into this over the past couple of years. We've grown to 2,500 subscribers. We hit that today. Big milestone for the podcast. We're trying to grow this thing. Our goal is 10K. Trying to make this a thing. So if you like what we're putting out there, feel free to hit a subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. We really appreciate it. We can't do it without all of you. And at the end of the day, we're trying to help you win. So we're doing this for all of you. All right,
Aiden. For the hashtag mean team.
The mean team. All right. I swear to God, or I swear maybe not to God. I don't want to offend any of our listeners. I swear I've seen the light of day today. I've not just been living in the sheets. But this is my ranking system. This is what I put together. These rankings are going to be in the show notes of this episode. So if you want to reference this, feel free to take a look at it. We don't have a website yet, so you're just going to have to kind of jump in and look at the published version of the sheet, but you can take a look at it. You should be able to edit it, play around with it. I also have some our wide receiver data, RB data, defensive data. So feel free to use that. Take a look at it. It's pretty simple here. On the very left, I've got my rankings. In the middle, I have the ECR rankings, expert consensus rankings. I'm going to highlight some of the guys that I have the biggest differences against. You'll also see fantasy points per game, expected fantasy points per game, a metric that I call efficiency, which is essentially just fantasy points per game minus expected fantasy points per game. If you're in the green, you're doing well with your usage. If you're in the red, you might be a prime regression candidate. Then I also have the RTM score, which again weights all of these different factors to give you an idea of some of the best and worst plays on the slate. So, Aiden, without further ado, we're going to launch in here with tier 1, and we've got another RB1 that's emerged. We crowned a new one last week in Saquon without CMC. I think we'll be bouncing around for a little bit trying to figure out who the RB1 is. But I'll start things off here with the first tier. At RB1, I have Alvin Kamara. 2, Devin Achane. 3, Jordan Mason, just like we wrote it up at the beginning of the year. Saquon Barkley at 4, and 5, Bijan Robinson. So I'm pretty, I have a lot of different discrepancies here against ECR, so I'll just highlight each one. Alvin Kamara, great matchup. Some of the best usage and efficiency in fantasy football through 2 weeks. This matchup is going to be up in pace against the Ravens. These rankings are in PPR, so Alvin Kamara and Achane definitely get an upgrade in PPR. They're still great in half, but just to preface, this is PPR rankings. Devin Achane at 2. Skylar Thompson has a career 27% target rate to running backs when he started. It's pretty good.
That's awesome. That's
pretty good. Now, Mostert is practicing, so Mostert will probably get his touches still, but Mike McDaniel's making an argument that Achane could touch the ball even more because he's playing so well. So Achane's locked and loaded top 5 guy rest of season if he stays healthy. Fingers crossed. Quick note on Jordan Mason. Strong argument here that he actually could be the running back 1 this week. His matchup against a Swiss cheese Rams front is what dreams are made of. Running backs right now are averaging close to 28 fantasy points per game against the Rams front. No Debo, no CMC. Shanahan doesn't trust Garendo. This is a great spot for Jordan Mason. If they're able to run the ball and this game goes how we think it's going to go. And then Bijan Robinson, a little down on him against his RB1 ranking. I still think he's a top 5 play. I just don't really know where the RB1 ranking's coming from. This is a tough matchup against KC. His usage has been really good, 18.7 expected fantasy points per game, but it hasn't been number 1 usage. This isn't number 1 matchup. Still a great play. Bijan looks awesome. I just don't have him as my RB1 this week. I'll pause here. Any thoughts on tier 1 before we get to tier 2?
Yeah, I think you make a good point about Bijan. He's been really good this year, but like he hasn't had that like monster game yet. Averaging right around 20 touches a game, which is awesome. Like 80+% snap share. So it's like everything looks really good there. I think like one thing like you maybe make an argument for was like the Atlanta offense looked like night and day different on Monday night versus week 1, which is encouraging. I think Kirk kind of had his feet under him a bit more. Bijan, was just shy of 100 yards, caught almost all of his targets, 4 for 5 there. So I think there's definitely an argument to be made for number 1, but, the matchup's definitely tricky. And then you highlighted Achane. I think, we talked about like there's I wouldn't even call it a bit, there's some uncertainty with Skylar Thompson at QB, but it's like, it's nothing but green flags with this guy. Like he's pacing for just like absolutely insane numbers. Really not all that worried about Mostert coming back. Wasn't much of a factor in terms of like taking into his workload week 1. And then last, like Alvin Kamara RB1 is just like time's a flat circle. Kubiak has this offense like what feels like in a different league compared to the rest of like the play callers right now. Like the motion, the schemes, everything is just like absolutely, choosing his shots, and the Philly defense really doesn't look all that good. So, this is a great tier. Didn't touch on Jordan Mason much. The guy's a freight train, and then Saquon's been, Saquon's been awesome. I think he's averaging just under 20. Yeah, what is it? 20 fantasy points a game. Yeah, just over that. Yeah. So it's like
Saquon's averaging 25 fantasy points per game right now.
He's a drop away from another, call it, 7-8 fantasy points if he catches that ball on 3rd down and scores. So it's like, you love what you're seeing from all these guys, surefire studs from all 5.
Next tier, guys, I got running backs 6 through 12. I've got Rhamondre Stevenson here, Breece Hall at 7, Jahmyr Gibbs at 8, Tony Pollard at 9, Josh Jacobs at 10, James Cook at 11, Derrick Henry at 12. The initial model, the RTM score, absolutely loves Rhamondre this week. Plus matchup against a Swiss cheese front in the New York Jets that have given up 22 fantasy points per game to running backs. Rhamondre has incredible usage. He has essentially his expected fantasy points per game is 22.5. The production has been there, 19 fantasy points per game so far. The Montressance is back, dude. Like he's a top 12 play. The model had him really high at RB5. I had to drop him to 6, but he's up 8 spots against expert consensus rankings. So it's pretty wild to see that in action. I'm a little bit down on Breece Hall. This is just a down in pace, low implied total on Thursday Night Football. And the Pats are much better against the run than, say, the Jets are against the run. So
For sure.
nothing against Breece. Breece is a locked and loaded RB1. I just didn't have him here at RB2 like ECR does.
Yeah.
Another call out here is Anthony Pollard. Great matchup versus Green Bay, who's given up 25 fantasy points per game to running backs so far. Tyjae's dealing with an ankle injury. He didn't practice today, but Tajay said he came out today and said he was going to play. So that's what he's saying. Usage and production have been great. It's been way ahead of Tajay at this point. We thought this would be a 50-50 split. It's more been like 70-30. He's an RB1 in week 3. I've got him 12 spots ahead of experts consensus rankings, all the way up at RB9. Derrick Henry's got a really good matchup. James Cook was great in week 2. Josh Jacobs was awesome on the ground, but this is kind of a Malik Willis offense. Who knows if he's able to do that again against the Tennessee front. What are your thoughts on tier 2? And any guys you're higher or lower on?
Yeah. Tony Pollard, you mentioned, absolutely love what I've seen out of him through 2 games. I think the Tajay, injury is unfortunate, but the usage only increased from week 1 to week 2. I think we all loved what we saw in week 1 versus Chicago, and then to come out and see him used as much as he was in, a game that they were either trailing or behind for most of that game, he had 6 targets. That was super encouraging. It was, there was a thought that maybe Tajay, takes him off the field in some of those obvious passing downs, and that didn't happen, which is super encouraging. So, 15 plus fantasy points, both of his games so far. Love that. And then Josh Jacobs as well. A tougher matchup to a degree with some of those guys up front. I know the unit as a whole hasn't been great. The D-line's really good, but he's been an absolute freak, dude. Averaging, about 120 yards a game on the ground. He was a goal line fumble away from, a 20 burger last week in an absolute cush matchup versus Indy. So really like these guys. Good to see them establish their roles in their respective backfields. The Breece ranking's hard here. I don't know. I don't know if I could put him behind Rhamondre, but Rhamondre's been really good. And then you kind of got Braylon Allen chipping away at Breece's role, which is great for New York Jets football, bad for fantasy. Because the kid looks good, 20 years old, absolutely shot out of a cannon. The dude's a stud. So it feels wrong having him here, but I don't know. Does he have RB1 upside against, a bit of a tougher matchup this week? Probably is, I'm not banking on it though. I feel like he probably finishes around there. It just feels weird going that far against DCR here.
It's crazy because Rhamondre has better usage than Breece Hall through 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Breece has produced him, but not by much, only by 2 points. So
yeah.
It's really not that crazy. Rhamondre has just been really good
really
through 2 weeks.
He's been good.
So Rhamondre was a league winner 2 years ago. Last year, part of a really bad offense, gets a high ankle sprain. I think maybe we just kind of lost the plot on how good Rhamondre Stevenson is. He got paid too. So
yeah, I totally faded him, and it might bite me a little bit. He's been really fucking good. Yeah, that offense is absolutely abusing him there in all the best ways.
Yeah, and again, both of these guys are in decent matchups. Thursday Night Football is always rough, but they're both healthy. They're both really good plays, all things considered. Yeah. I do worry about their point totals. The Patriots have a 15.75 implied point total. Breece and the Jets 22.25. So
it's a full touchdown.
I don't know.
Full touchdown.
This one could bite me. This could bite me with Rhamondre, but we saw Jordan Mason absolutely destroy this Jets front. So we'll see if that trend holds on Thursday Night Football tomorrow night.
Yep.
Moving on to tier 3 here, running backs 13 through 18. At 13, I've got Jonathan Taylor, 14, Travis Etienne, 15, Kyren Williams, 16, Zach Charbonnet, 17, David Montgomery, and 18, Jerome Ford. Big stance here is down 8 spots against Jonathan Taylor. He is 5th in ECR. I've got him at 13th in my rankings. Usage has been solid. It's been kind of meh, but whatever. It's been fine. He's been averaging.
At the end of the last game, man. They touched the ball in the fourth quarter.
His expected fantasy points per game, 12.4. Fantasy points per game has been 13, so pretty solid production, but that's fringe RB1 production so far. The matchup isn't amazing against the Bears front. Like, it's not bad. It's not good. They've been pretty good at bottling up running backs so far to start the year. JT is the undisputed bell cow, but they went in the fourth quarter and they're just passing the ton, and they got him off the field, even though he had a really nice reception and he was explosive. So I'm not going to overdo this because essentially our TM score had him all the way down in the 20s this week. I'm not going to go that far. Still got him as a fringe RB1. I just temper your expectations for JT this week. I'll leave it at that. Guy also I wanted to highlight is Kyren. I've got him 2 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. Kyren's due for some positive regression. He has actually had one of the most valuable roles in fantasy to start the season at 20.3 expected fantasy points per game, but he's only averaging around 15. The offensive line is terrible, but I will say there is a trend that when a offense misses its star receivers, the running backs tend to get targeted. And you saw that at the end of that game. He was getting targeted a bunch. That's really good for his PPR value. I think he does well against the Niners in the pass game. I think I wouldn't be shocked if he got like 5 or 6 receptions if he stays healthy, knowing how this Rams offense is going. And the Rams also will get their left tackle, Alaric Jackson, back. So that should be a bit of a boost. Another guy I wanted to highlight here is Zack Charbonnet. I've got him 2 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. He's started, I think, 4 or 5 games, and every matchup's been really hard against good defensive fronts. This is his first time where he's going up against a bad front that just got gashed by James Cook. So I think this is a really good opportunity for Charbo to show who he is as a potential workhorse in the NFL. We're still firmly K9 guys, but this is a good spot if you're starting Charbonnet this week. Feel confident about that. And then Jerome Ford. I've got him 5 spots ahead of expert consensus rankings. This is a plus matchup versus the Giants. Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler just had great games catching the ball out of the backfield and running the ball down the field. Foreman usage was in week 2 was puzzling, but Foreman fumbled. He didn't look that good. Like Ford was the fastest ball carrier in all of week 2 in terms of MPH. He's the best back in this backfield. I think he's a good play this week. I'll pause. Anyone here in this tier that's catching your eye or any ranking that you think's interesting to you?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight Jerome Ford too. The usage last week was kind of strange, like really out of nowhere with Deonta Foreman, but they looked like entirely different running backs. Like Jerome Ford did so much more with his touches last week. Like he's just the better running back. He has Jerome Ford's 23 years old. How old's Jerome Ford off the top of my head? Let's see.
He's a year 3 guy. Would 25. Be like maybe 20. Yeah. I think he came out of school 25. A little bit later.
The legs just look so much better out of him. I'd be shocked if he doesn't kind of take back some of those carries that Foreman had last week. And to your point, like the Giants are an awesome matchup. You know, call what you will with Deshaun Watson, that offense, but they're going to beat the shit out of them. The Giants are, you could argue, if not the worst team in the NFL, like pretty firmly bottom 3. So it's like playing your offensive guys against that team every week is going to be, you know, a pretty plus matchup.
Yeah.
And then I think you make a good point about Kyren too. It's been a grind for Kyren owners. You know, he's at least scored both weeks. You know,
okay.
right around like 15 points both weeks. Like you'll totally take that in your lineup.
Yeah.
But like it's been pretty ugly. I like the point you make around the passing though too. I think they're going to go down pretty early. Like that offense has, you know, no tools in the toolbox this week. It's, you know, Kyren and Matt Stafford versus the world with a couple of, you know, like replacement players at wide receiver. So yeah, I could see him, you know, getting upwards of 6 to 8 targets potentially, as like you've just got to rely on like the only reliable playmaker in that offense.
Yeah, he's got one of the lowest implied team totals on the week 2 of 18. It's not a great spot for the Rams. I just in PPR, I think he might be a little bit of a PPR scam this week. We saw that he hit home. I think he had like 20 receiving yards on 2 or 3 catches in garbage time, plus that touchdown.
Yeah.
You're going to take that every day of the week. Considering the offensive environment he's playing in, it just would be hilariously ironic if he's the one who stayed healthy all year. Like it would just be.
That's what
comedy.
I was saying to us, because I've just been banking on or not banking on it, but like I'm kind of just assuming he's going to get hurt. Like I'm not going to cheer when he gets hurt, but it's
of course not.
I have been telling you, you know, like I've been telling everyone I told you so. But yeah, no, and I think like just on top of it too, like you know he's going to get like the inside the 5 touches every time. Like he's getting them every single time. So you know, like they're gonna, you know, the Rams will score some points. Like they should lose, and it probably won't be all that close, but like they get in the 3-5 yard line, like it's Kyren's getting the first touch pretty much every single time, especially without Cup and Puka. So like, got to keep playing him. He'll probably, bully his way into another 15 points, and you'll take it. But yeah, tough matchup.
Yeah, the irony too is that the plan was to get Kyren off the field more, but with all of his stars down, McVay's just going to ride with guys he trusts.
Yeah,
he's just going to ride with guys he trusts, and he trusts Kyren. So
yeah,
I think that's where he's at. And Corum did play in garbage time and only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. So like, I just, this offensive line's terrible. I don't think anyone's coming in to save the day in terms of efficiency.
No.
Tier 4 that I've got here, running backs 19 to 25. I've got James Conner 19, B-Rob 20, Zach Moss 21, Zamir White 22, Sade 23, Aaron Jones 24, J.K. Dobbins 25. So little low on James Conner. And anytime I'm low on James Conner, he dunks on me. It's just a tough matchup against Detroit. They've got a really good front. They're great at stopping the run. Conner will be a good start this week. I just don't have him as a fringe RB1. The usage is great. The production's awesome. James Conner's really good when he plays. It's like, don't come at me if you're Conner, bro. It's honestly probably a good sign that I'm low on Conner, because anytime I'm low on him, the man puts me in the dirt. So if you're a Conner starter, this is probably a bullish indicator for you. P-Rob, great start to the year so far. He looks explosive. He looks amazing. And Ekeler looks like a great compliment to him. It's like one of the better tandems in the league right now.
Yeah, it's working pretty well.
And Cliff can call a good run game. So he's really high in ECR's rankings. They've got him at... Oh, I lost it real quick. Give me a second. Yeah. They've got ECR's got him at 15. I've got him down at 20. Just kind of, I don't know, tough matchup. Cincinnati got gashed by Rhamondre week 1. They were good to an extent against the Chiefs week 2. Ekeler's going to play a role. So that's why B-Rob's been good from efficiency standpoint, but the usage is still around that mid-tier RB2 usage. Zach Moss and Zamir White. If there was ever a week, guys, you're going up against Washington and Carolina, respectively. Those are two of the worst fronts in the league. So if there was ever a week for those two guys to do it, it'd be this week. Sade, the vibes are a little rough right now with the groin injury and his middling production. Great. So I'm a little worried about Sade. And then Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler's lurking, and Houston's got a great run-stopping front. And J.K. Dobbins has been the second most efficient back through 2 weeks against usage. But does the magic stop? I think you got to play him, especially if he's like your RB2 and you hit gold, but it's not a great matchup against Pittsburgh this week. So I'll pause. Running backs 19 through 25, tier 4. Any thoughts on these guys before we get to tier 5?
Yeah, my first initial thought is I think we've got James Conner too low. I was like, he probably belongs in the tier above. Just like looking at what he's done and like the usage in that offense. The guy's, 19 points back-to-back weeks, touchdowns in both weeks. That offense is absolutely humming. Like, I don't really have any doubt that he's going to score again this week. Like Kyler's a man on fire right now. Absolutely dominating in that offense. So really like James Conner. I think you could probably bump him up a couple spots, or at least just like expand that tier to one more guy. So really like James Conner, and then Zach Moss, like you mentioned too. The Washington defense isn't very good. They've been about middle of the pack in terms of points allowed to the running back position. But I think they get killed. And I think he, plays pretty well. The last one I want to highlight is Aaron Jones. I think this could be a tough matchup for him. I think the Bears' offensive line sucks, but the Bears just ran for 40 yards against that Houston front. They're nasty. And again, I think that's a game where Houston could go up and could go up early, which doesn't bode well for a huge game on the ground for Aaron Jones. So we're getting into that tier where you start to get a little uncomfortable with some of these guys in your lineup. I think through the James Ford tier, I'm like, hell yeah, lock and load it. Whereas here I'm like, ooh, Zamir White, it's a pretty good matchup, third easiest or a second easiest to running back. It's okay, probably, but I'm not certain of it.
Rough. It's over for White because they keep saying they want to get White the ball. Game script has kind of pushed him out. They can't really run the ball, but if he can't give you an RB2 finish this week, it's droppable in my opinion against Carolina.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then Dobbins is another interesting one. Like, what a story he's been. If you look at his fantasy points per game versus expected, it's more than double, which is pretty nuts. Like the guy looks phenomenal, but
Yeah.
he's playing
11.
a pretty tough. Let's see, what are they ranked? Steelers are the fifth hardest running back matchup so far in terms of fantasy points allowed. So that should be a tough one, but man, it just feels like they're just going to keep running down people's throats. So yeah, it's an interesting tier, but some of these guys need to be started still. So
you're starting all 25 of these guys for the most part. The first 25. I think you're fine starting them.
Yeah, you should.
Honestly,
this next year is when there's some real benchable guys in here.
Yeah, White's the one, man. I've not been a big fan. I kind of moved him up 5 spots because of this, but it's if this is ever a week for Zamir White to have a good week, and the coaching staff swears they want him to have a good week.
Yeah, the usage was way up in week 2.
Yeah.
So now if he played like 60% of the snaps, if he does that again in week 2, figure it should at home against a absolute cush matchup.
Tier 5 here, running backs 26 to 34. 26, Alexander Mattison. 27, Javonte Williams. 28, Devin Singletary. 29, Najee Harris. 30, DeAndre Swift. 31, Austin Ekeler. 32, Rico Dowdle. 33, Zeke Elliott. 34, Cam Akers. I can't believe Cam Akers is here in the top 34. I'm up on Alexander Mattison, up 13 spots against ECR. It's a great matchup, but he may ride the pine because it's a positive game script for White. I don't know, but I mean, Madison's usage has been pretty solid. His production's been good. He's been better than White to start the year. We'll see how this kind of shakes out, but he's fringe starting territory based off this matchup against Carolina. I don't know about Javonte Williams, man. This is rough. He's turning into one of the worst picks in fantasy as it currently stands. Really inefficient.
I was just
this is a good matchup.
Like it's like the Zamir White argument. It's like we got to see it this week, or this is like full panic mode. Because it's a really good matchup for him. So if he can't get going against this Tampa Bay front, then yeah, I don't know if I could start Javonte. I didn't draft him, but
no, I didn't either.
This is like a Hail Mary final attempt before he rides the pine until your bye weeks or injuries.
I think I'd rather start Devin Singletary over him, but it's just a tough matchup against the Browns, and I just could see Daniel Jones throwing 3 picks against the Browns. So
I'm probably not starting either.
I'm starting him against you, man. Singletary's been nice to start the year, dude. He's been perfect RB2, averaging 12 fantasy points per game, basically hitting his usage perfectly. So I'm been happy with him as a draft pick. Down on DeAndre Swift. That might have been one of the worst contracts given out free agency this year. I know you're a Bears fan.
No, he doesn't look good. But the line is, I don't know. It's a combination. I don't think he's really hitting holes. Like the vision's been pretty ass, and then the line is just not doing him any favors. So yeah, it's a bit of a bummer.
Hit on Austin Ekeler, but good at usage, good efficiency. He looks healthy. He's like dunking on efficiency. 10.9 fantasy points per game, 8 usage, 8 fantasy points per game expected. So good for Ekeler. He looks healthy. It's a good 1-2 punch. I think they're utilizing him really well as a receiver. But B-Rob kind of leads that backfield. I continue to be high on Rico Dowdle. 11 spots ahead of ECR. Good usage. Week 2 really trending up. Fun up and pace matchup against the Ravens. They're good against running backs, but we'll see. They're going to need to win this game, and Dowdle probably needs to play well. So I like Dowdle this week. And then the guy I wanted to highlight is Cam Akers. I've got him 27 spots ahead of ECR. Dameon Pierce did not practice today. Joe Mixon did not practice today. Obviously, if Joe Mixon plays, Joe Mixon's a top 14 guy this week. But Cam Akers looked really good in the preseason. He looked good when he played against Sunday night, but he did fumble, which isn't great. But it's going to be him and Dar Ogunbowale because Pierce has the hamstring, Mixon has the ankle. Neither are practicing. Talk about just kind of starting somebody and just finding gold, because Cam Akers may be projected for 13, 14 fantasy points if he's just the lone guy in this backfield.
Yep.
I'll pause here. Any thoughts on tier 5 before we wrap things up with tier 6?
Yeah, one guy I'd say I'm probably a little higher on this week is Najee. I actually see him having a pretty good game. The usage has been really promising this year in terms of like the snaps and like you just look at his fantasy points per game and expected like the efficiency really hasn't been all that great. Hasn't scored yet, but like right around like 70, 80 yards a game. Like as a running back, he's actually been pretty good. And then you look at a Chargers matchup here that on paper looks a little tougher, but like the Chargers really haven't played anyone yet.
No.
If we're being completely honest, like it looks harder than I think it is. And the Pittsburgh offense has actually looked pretty competent. So, I'm gonna plant my flag that Najee scores this week for the first time and gives us like an RB2 finish. So I actually really like him this week. I think Najee is just like super dependable. It's kind of just run into some bad luck and some tougher fronts early on.
I will say with Najee, Warren's usage did tick up in week 2 after he's healing from the hamstring. So
Yep.
we saw, I mean, Najee still out-touched him 20-9, but
Yeah.
Warren was still pretty involved. So I'm Najee's a hold. I think he's a fine start. If you have him, you're probably starting him.
Yep.
But I'm curious to know how this backfield develops with a healthier Warren in place to see what this looks like. But Pittsburgh's been exactly
50,
who we thought
50, depending
were
on the
gonna
game
be.
script, I would assume.
Yeah, probably.
Like, which is fine. Like, you kind of anticipate Najee gets the red zone looks, the more like obvious rushes where, Warren is a bit more the Swiss Army knife there.
You got a read on Cam Akers at all?
Not really. Like you can only start him if Mixon's out. And even if like you're probably not very like you have to do it because like you want the starting running back in that Houston offense, but I don't know. That's a little dicey personally. And it's just Cam Akers, like nothing like putting Cam Akers back in the lineup for the first time in 3 years and just getting burned again. You're like, I remember this. Like I've been here before. This is not
crafted
new.
Some usable weeks. He had some usable weeks down the stretch in 2022 for the Rams. He looked okay when he played for the Vikings.
Yep.
He looked really good in the preseason. So maybe I'm just have preseason goggles, but I don't know, man. They don't stack the box at all against this Houston offense. They're paranoid against Nico Collins, CJ Stroud, Steph Diggs, and Tank Dell. So
yeah.
So we'll see. Would you start Akers if you knew Akers was going to be the sole guy with Ogunbowale? Would you start him over Dowdle?
I think so. To be honest, yeah.
You start him over Singletary.
Ooh, yeah. Honestly, I think I'd put him at like I think he'd be at like the top of this tier for me.
Okay.
I just have so much faith in the Houston offense. Is kind of where my attitude is right now.
Yeah, I'm keep an eye on the waivers because I bet you Cam Akers is a free agent and he's somebody in a league where K9's hurt for me and my third running back hasn't really shook out the way I thought it would. That I think I'm going to be pretty swift and ruthless with the Akers pickup. Honestly.
Akers should be on your watch list so you can find him very quickly. Yeah. No, I completely agree.
All right, last tier. Let's get out of here. Running backs 35 through 44. Yeah, we have our Chiefs finally. Running back 35, Tyjae Spears. 36, Samaje Perine. 37, Carson Steele. 38, Chuba Hubbard. 39, Jalen Warren. 40, Bucky Irving. 41, Jaleel McLaughlin. 43, Chase Brown. 44, Ty Chandler. And oh, wow, we got a BOGO because we got a 45th running back who snuck in here. That's the Gus Bus himself. I don't know, man. Okay, let's start here. Tyjae, great matchup, but he's banged up.
I didn't realize we got a freebie. This is awesome.
Carson Steele, Samaje Perine. Your guess is as good as mine.
I'm going Perine.
I think they're going to pass the shit out of the ball.
Like, you look at their efficiency, and both have been, like, Steele's been worse. But, I think Perine could have, like, 8 targets.
He doesn't have a carry yet. Perine does not have a carry yet.
Perine has not registered a carry. That is correct.
No, he has not registered a carry yet. So
he'll get it this week. There's no way they elevate Kareem Hunt, correct?
No, they've already elevated Keontae Ingram. Kareem Hunt's on the practice squad.
Yeah. I was thinking, like we don't think Kareem gets activated, right? There's no way they go.
There's a chance. There's a chance. But they've elevated Ingram. We'll see. I kind of played this one conservatively on the waivers. It might burn me. I do think P. Ryan's probably the guy, but Carson Steele probably has a higher likelihood of scoring a touchdown. So,
Yep.
I think the answer is the Chiefs just throw the shit out of the ball.
I think the answer, which I have to capitulate on, is probably Rashee Rice. Is just like Rashee Rice 10-target game and just
might be a good week to get Travis Kelce going. Might be, you know.
I know. I have him in a league, and I'm like, do I bench? Like, it's a league that we don't have a tight end spot, and I'm like, I'm considering benching Travis Kelce because it's been
probably
awful.
should play him.
Awful.
Mahomes hasn't
awful
been very good at all in fantasy yet. 2 tough matchups too against the Ravens and Bengals.
Yeah, this one's better.
This is a get right spot against the Falcons. Sure, they're a good story beating the Eagles on Monday night, but they should handle the Falcons.
They should beat the shit out of them.
I think it's in the dome on Sunday night, right? It's at the that should be high scoring. Hopefully,
yeah. One other guy that I actually really like too is Bucky, with Rachaad White kind of banged up, and I call it a plus matchup against Denver. I think he could have a nice game here. Was a bit quiet last week after his week 1 showing, but this is a guy that I could see soaring up pretty quickly, especially if Rachaad's on some kind of snap count.
Yeah, I have 1 injury away. Bucky's probably the biggest 1 injury away guy in the NFL. Like if Rachaad White were to miss time, Bucky might get loose.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Chase Brown, we're 2 weeks away from being dropped. He's got matchups against Washington and Carolina. This is your time, man. If you ever got anything in you. His usage has been garbage. It's been the Zack Moss show, but if there's ever been a week for Chase Brown to get good, or at least
it got
2 week
even
stretch.
Worse too. Zack Moss had 80% of the snaps last week.
Against the Chiefs, they're going to trust the guy that they trust. Right? Sure. They're going to go with the guy they trust.
But to your point, I think we're pretty close to being droppable. Like he has given you absolutely nothing of any fantasy value so far through 2 weeks. It's we'll see.
Ty Chandler looks great, but he is still running behind Aaron Jones, so still kind of buried right now.
Yeah, he's kind of just trapped.
And Gus Edwards, -8 against the ECR. No thanks.
Yeah, I'm good. It's Dobbins or bust.
We're getting into droppable territory unless Gus takes a month or 2 to get healthy, because he did have a knee operation in the offseason. We do have to highlight that with the Gus bus.
His usage did increase. I don't know how, man. Yeah, I think I didn't see him at all. Yeah, his usage. He played 1 more snap than JK, which they got to stop doing that. They got to stop doing that.
He has the same usage as J.K. Dobbins. 9.4 expected fantasy points to 9.6. J.K. Dobbins is averaging 21.5 points.
4 points.
Gus Edwards 5.
Yeah. No thanks. That's a drop for me. I wouldn't roster Gus Edwards anymore.
That's it, man. 45 running backs. Week 3. We've done it. We unveiled the RTM score. We walked through it. This will be a fun week, man. I'm very curious to see if Alvin Kamara continues this pace, because that's kind of a sleeper Hall of Fame guy.
For sure.
Sleeper Hall of Fame guy. He scored so many touchdowns in his career. If he is able to put together a vintage Kamara season, it's going to be a sleeper Hall of Fame guy, in my opinion.
How many touchdowns do you think he has in his career?
80.
Yeah, I've got 83. That ball, that was good.
80. Yeah. He's unbelievable. He's just been a touchdown machine in his career since the day. I think he scored 18 touchdowns his rookie season. The man is just. It's pretty fun to watch Alvin Kamara at open space. He has the best balance I think I've ever seen a back have. It looks like he's walking when he's running. It doesn't.
It's pretty effortless. I do enjoy watching him carry the rock. It's poetry in motion.
It's the opposite of Isaiah Pacheco. This
zero
is
wasted movement. Yeah,
it's literally the smoothest you're ever gonna get.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you for coming on to talk running backs. We're gonna talk receivers tomorrow night. That'll be in the feed on Wednesday. This will be in the feed on Thursday. Before we get out of here, Jets, Patriots. Who's gonna win?
I think the Jets kill them. I think the Jets
probably.
They should.
Right?
They should, man. Patriots kind of banged up. Jets, the Jets should roll them. It's in Foxborough, or is it in?
I think it is.
I think it doesn't really matter. It's not much of a away game either way.
No. It's in New York, because New York hasn't played a home game yet.
Oh, it's at MetLife. They
Yeah.
should roll them.
They should win.
That offense has looked weird, but again, like the Tennessee defense is good. I think like after 2 games, that's a good defense. So like it was a little funky last week.
They muck it up, and also Rodgers hasn't really played meaningful football in like 18 months.
Yeah.
He's give
Yeah,
the guy a little grace. You got to learn how to take
a little
hits
bit.
again. He's like
Yeah,
40,
no.
so
I
they'll
would
figure
take
it out.
the Jets points.
All right, Aiden, we appreciate you for hopping on as always to talk running backs. Excited to talk receivers tomorrow. Thank you
Yes, sir.
everybody for tuning in. Until next time.